So guys, the last episode of this series was released in March 2015. So here I am back in February 2018 with episode 2, as promised, of RuneScape Classic Revisited. We're going to do the range special. I'd actually edited together about 15 minutes of it back in 2015, but some stuff came up and I ended up stopping playing. I did come back to the game in the interim, and I made some stat gains by going over to the dark side that have sort of surpassed the goals that I had at the end of the last episode. I've been kind of inspired to come back by the current Classic Iron Man series being run by Jeremy or RuneScape, so I want to give a shout out to him for inspiring me to come back and do some legit playing again. I have to put a disclaimer here that I'm in no way endorsing the use of bots in this game. Definitely if you haven't played the game before, you should just come at it without any cheats. It's the best way to have fun. I know for me the most fun that I've had in this game is when I was working my way up to completing the Legends quest. Right, so with that out of the way, let's just get into the episode. So the first 15 minutes or so will be what I edited together back in 2015. In the past few days I've finished a few voiceovers, recorded a few new clips, and at the end of the episode we'll come back to the present day. I'm going to talk about my idea for what to do with the rest of the series. So let's get stuck into it. Hello and welcome to episode 2 of RSC Revisited. As promised, in this episode we're going to take a look at the range skill, which works pretty different in RSC than in the newer games. So we're headed out to Black Unicorns in the Wilderness to take a look at how it works. First of all, we're going to have a quick recap of how melee combat works, so let's take a look. Okay, so when I get into combat I can't escape until we've exchanged blows 3 times, and this means that all weapons hit at the same speed. So you see I can switch between battle axe, longsword and no weapon, doesn't matter, we exchange blows at the same rate. I also can't eat food as we're fighting. If I wanted to heal I'd have to step off, spam click my food and then get back in the fight, like so. This means that if your max hit with melee is more than 1/3 of your opponent's HP level, then it's possible for you to 3-hit them without any chance of escape. It was this realisation which first led players to train pure accounts with very high strength for their combat levels. Combat level is calculated differently, so a pure build which works in 07 for example would not work in RSC. I'm going to concentrate on talking about the range skill for this episode, but I might cover pures in future. A strange thing about ranged in RSC is that it can only be used from a distance, so if I begin to attack this white knight with my magic longbow, I'll start to fire arrows, but when it gets into close combat with me, even though the bow is equipped, you can see that I'm punching, so ranged weapons cannot be used in close combat. For this reason, a lot of players only train to the level 35 requirements for one of the quests, like at the Temple of Ikov, and then just leave the skill alone. It's not very popular, but I think it has some interesting redeeming features. Okay, so I'm here in the Heroes Guild basement. As I mentioned in the last episode, for melee combat everywhere is single, but for mage everywhere is multi. Same is true for ranged, so I can just get on this guy's fight and attack his blue dragon. This is also true in PKing situations in the Wilderness, where you can pile other players with ranged and magic attacks. For this reason, the highest level prayer in the game is Protect from Missiles at level 40, which provides 100% protection from ranged attacks from other players. Although you can completely negate ranged damage in this way, prayer has a high drain rate, so if you get attacked by a team of ranged PKers, unless you have a full infantry of prayer pots, you're probably going to end up in a lot of trouble. I mentioned in the last episode that I wanted to use my Irit Leaves to make super attack potions, but I've realised I can get a bit more XP out of them if I make poison antidote potions instead. So we're here at Black Unicorns in the Wilderness, which is the best spot I've found for collecting the horns we need. I've included this clip because it was one of the first uses I found for the range skill. If they're at low HP after 3 rounds of combat, some monsters will flee, and because there's no run option you can get dragged quite a long way if you try to chase them with melee. So I started bringing a bow along, and as you can see it's really helpful for collecting the horns. For some reason the unicorns come back to fight in melee again after you shoot them. Another technique to prevent monsters fleeing is to step out to combat yourself if they're not yet at low HP after 3 rounds. This way they'll be locked in combat for at least another 3 rounds before they can flee. Repeatedly stepping out of combat like this can also be used to land extra hits in longer fights. If you time it so that for every 3 hits your opponent lands, you can get 4. Here's a clip of me punching giants to demonstrate. Another useful feature is that if your opponent moves out of range, your character will automatically follow and continue shooting when the opponent is in range again. Put simply, the only way to escape is if you can walk in one straight line out of the wilderness, as even walking diagonally to change direction will bring you back into firing range. So for some reason there are a bunch of guides that say that you should train range on guard dogs in RD. I had a go at these, but it seems like they have a lot of HP for the experience that they give you, and they're quite spread out. So a better spot is if you have completed the clock tower, or at least partially completed the clock tower quest, head to the clock tower south of RD. You can find these dungeon rats. As you can see, there are plenty of rats behind the fence to attack. To make a comparison and show why dungeon rats is such a good training spot, guard dogs have 51 hit points and give a total of 112 ranged experience, while dungeon rats have 12 hit points but still give 52 ranged experience each while having a lower defense. This means that by RSC standards this is an extremely good training spot for ranged, and in terms of experience per hour I believe that it's the best in the game. This spot could also be very good for low to mid level melee training, but of course the drawback is that you get no useful drops from the rats. Another very strange thing about ranged in RSC is that it gives no hit points experience at all, and the XP that would have gone to HP is given to ranged as well. You can see I'm getting no HP XP from killing these rats. When you reach a decent range level and you're able to clear them all, to avoid running out of rats you can simply hop backwards and forwards between two worlds. I stayed here and did some training for a while, and eventually I reached 63 range. So we've covered bows and arrows, and I'd like to take a look at some of the other range weapons available in RSC. So in order to do this I had to do some smithing. So we headed down into the dwarven mines to get some coal, and I didn't realise I was so close, but apparently at 60 mining you can get into the mining guild. So I went to take a look, and as expected it was completely full of bots that just run around in a circle chasing the same ores. So look at this is pretty ridiculous. I was pretty cheesed off at first, but I realised it doesn't matter because being able to come through the mining guild gives me a shortcut to get to the bank. I can keep using the same spot over here outside with no competition, so that's pretty useful. So an interesting thing about mining in RSC is that it doesn't matter if you've got a bronze pickaxe or a rune pickaxe. Each time you attempt to mine an ore, you have an equal chance of getting the ore from the rock. The difference is that for high level pickaxes such as rune, your player will automatically attempt to mine the ore more times. For example, rune tries 12 times automatically, while bronze will only try once. So if you're stuck with a bronze pickaxe, you can't afford a rune, you can still compete with the other miners and you have equal chance of getting the ores, but life gets a bit easier if you can afford a rune pickaxe and the skill becomes a bit more AFKable. So when I had a fair amount of ores, I headed up to the furnace to make some steel bars. And when I was done making the steel bars, I headed to Varrock to make some of the weapons we want to take a look at. So I decided I was going to make 140 dart tips. Seems like a good amount, and in the course of that I got 52 smithing. There's me making the final dart tips and moving on to throwing knives, and if you take a look at the image you notice something really strange is happening here. So what's going on? Let's take a look at these weapons. Here I'm headed out to the wizard's tower to test out the next range weapon I'm going to take a look at, which is spears. Yep, that's right, for some reason spears are a one-handed range projectile weapon in RuneScape Classic. On top of that they're unstackable, so if you want to kill anything you have to take almost a full infantry so you don't run out. Here I'm using Addy Spears against the Lesser Demon, getting some pretty good hits. I'm definitely impressed with the range strength of this weapon. I don't know what the exact stats are, but if you're interested you can check them out on the RSC wiki. But I can say that at my level they hit much harder than Mythal arrows. So I'm going to test out the steel throwing knives which I made earlier. You might have noticed when I was making them that similarly to spears they are unstackable. So as you can see, as I'm raging the guard dogs, my inventory is just going to empty out. However, there's one huge difference in spears which makes throwing knives totally unique in RuneScape Classic, and that is that they're the only range weapon which can also be used in melee combat. Remember in the earlier clip where I attacked a white knight with a magic longbow, and when it engaged me in melee combat the bow disappeared from my hand and I was punching? As you can see, in melee combat throwing knives remain in the hand and they're swung with the sword animation. Unfortunately, although throwing knives have some melee stats, these are extremely low compared to any melee weapon of the same material. I was interested in the potential of this weapon, so I decided to go on an adventure to get hold of a rune throwing knife, the most powerful in the game. In order to do this, I'd have to return to the Legends Quest dungeon. So here's me getting 66 magic because I thought I needed to get another soul rune to get back into the Legends Quest dungeon, but I didn't. So here's me in the Wizard's Guild buying soul runes that I don't need. Then I decided to check out the upstairs because there are apparently some portals up there that can teleport you to vaguely magical places around the world. The examines wouldn't tell me where they'd take me to, so I decided to close all the doors, and then I found that you can use the portal through the door, which is a bit weird. I ended up in the Dark Wizard's Tower. I need to make some orbs to get back into the dungeon, so here's me going to get a bucket and doing some fletching at the same time. When you fletch arrows, you get the XP from each of the arrowheads separately, so you see me getting loads of too tired messages there. The spellend wouldn't let me on the boat with the arrow supplies, even though I hadn't made any arrows yet, so I was walking back to Drano, but that was okay, because on the way I got 59 fletching, which is nice. Eventually I made it to Entrana, so filled my bucket with sand, grabbed a glass blowing pipe, and then headed to the other side of the island to get some seaweed. On the way back I bumped into the Entrana firebird, which is just a red chicken. If you examine it, it says probably not a chicken. And then if you examine the chickens, yep, that's definitely a chicken. So walk through the church on the way back, which has got some nice stained glass windows with little swords in, and started making some molten glass. I made up I recorded this is dead exciting. I only had one bucket, so I had to walk backwards and forwards to the sandpit. Hey, this is good. And then I made my orbs, made 4 of them, in case I fuck up and had to go back, then went to see what was going on in here. So here's a clip of me training at rats again and getting 64 ranged. We'll just pretend that I've edited this in the right order and that I haven't still got 58 fletching. So we're going to go to Camelot and do some shopping. We're going to check out Arheen because he's the closest general store to a bank. Sometimes players will sell him some fairly useful stuff. At the moment it turns out he's got over 2,000 fishing potions in one of the worlds, which isn't too useful, but this is how I got hold of my almost 300 ranging potions. You know, so you can really find some useful stuff in here sometimes. It's worth checking if you're passing by. The real reason we've come to Camelot is to go shopping at Hickton's archery store. Like we saw, I just got 59 fletching, and a lot of my fletching supplies have come from here. So you can buy some arrows to train range with. I usually buy out the bronze and irons that he stocks. He also stocks all types of arrowheads, which is really useful, so you can get hold of rune arrowheads from here. So one of my goals is to get 75 fletching, I think it is, so I can make my own rune arrows. That'll be pretty cool. At the moment I'm buying out the steel and mithril arrowheads. There are 3 worlds in RuneScape Classic, so by the time you've hopped around all of them, you can get a good little stash of supplies for fletching. You can see from one trip I've got 420 myths and 480 steel arrowheads, which will be some nice XP. From level 60 fletching I'll be able to start making addy arrows, so I guess I should start buying those heads as well. Here I am getting the boat to Karamja so I can head down to the jungle and go to the Legends dungeon so I can get hold of a rune throwing knife to take a look at its stats. I've edited this into a montage of kind of interesting sights on the way. Just buying a machete to get so I can hack my way through the jungle. Here's some joggers I encountered on the way, which are just big green giants. Feels weird doing commentary for this again, because it's been about a month since I had the time to record any, but I decided I'll finally finish off the episode and get it out. So here we are entering the dungeon through the bookcase. We've got to pick the lock on this door. I think this can break your your lockpicks, like that chest in Desert Treasure nowadays. So I'm always kind of scared of that on the way through, but fine, got it first time this time. I've got to force this door open. Get past the deathwings, the huge bats. I'll cut this out. For some reason the deathwings drop regular bones instead of bat bones. Okay, here's the gate that we've got to use the charge orb spell on, so thankfully that worked. Now the reason we've come here is because these strange barrels can be smashed. A random monster from quite a large selection will pop out and there'll be an item inside. So this time we got some rocks or something. I'm just going to skip through the interesting items you can get. You can get certificates which you can trade in for different items like swordfish, different types of fish. Here is a ship ticket, which allows us passage on the Lady of the Wave ship to get off the island, I think. I've never heard of this before, so I thought that was fairly interesting. I've cut this down a lot, but I actually spent about 2 hours here. I had to go bank for food and then come back. So I've cut out a lot of the action and just sort of edited into highlights. It was a lot of running around, prayer flicking, trying to make my food last as long as possible, because it takes a long time to get down to the Legends dungeon when you've got to shuffle along at this South Park pace, like in RuneScape Classic. And then finally, after about 2 hours, there it is on the floor. Couldn't believe it. Finally got the rune throwing knife. So now I get to check out its stats. So let's take a look. So here we are in Ezreal taking a look at the rune throwing knife. You might have noticed in the earlier clip with the steel knives that they appear as a sword in the hand. All sword-like weapons have the same sprite as they appear in the hand, so that includes daggers, short swords, long swords and two-handed swords, as you can see here with the rune versions. So you can't always tell what weapon your opponent's using, but a good clue if they're using a two-hander is that they won't have a shield. So let's take off this gear and take a look at the melee stats of this special weapon. Unfortunately they're horrible. So as you can see, it's got 18 aim and power. So here I've got a adamantite dagger for comparison. So rune throwing knife has 18 18, and the added dagger even has 16 and 16. So although you can use it in melee combat and it's the only ranged weapon type that's possible, it's completely useless. You can see here on the longsword it's got 50 and 50, and the rune two-hander has 71 71. So there's really no point in using this in melee combat, unfortunately. Although throwing knives are an interesting exception for ranged weapons because they can be used in close combat, their stats are horrible, so that it's not really worth using them, and remember that they fill up your inventory and are unstackable, so unfortunately they're fairly useless. Now I'm going to shoehorn in a clip of me getting 65 range. There we go.
RSC fact of the week.
So RSC fact of the week is that there is a dwarf cannon in RuneScape Classic, and this being the ranged special episode, we're going to take a look at how it works. So I had to make some cannonballs in order for us to check it out. You'll notice that each steel bar makes one cannonball in RuneScape Classic, and for some reason they're spiky. I don't really understand how that would work. Anyway, they take quite a long time to make. I'm not sure this is the best use of steel bars, but in the interest of science we're going to make some and we're going to check it out. Okay, so here we are getting our 750k out of the bank so that we can go buy a dwarf cannon. I've kind of sped up the clip of buying the dwarf cannon. Really need to get some better editing software, because if I speed up clips they go all choppy and strange like this. But let's go see what the cannon looks like in RSC. So we're here at the Hobgoblin Peninsula, where you might go to collect some snape grass by the crafting guild. Here I am trying to figure out what order these parts go together in. I think it's the stand next. Let's see. No, not the furnace. So it must be the barrels, then the furnace. So you can see the dwarf cannon looks quite different in RSC. Rather than spinning around, it just has a shitload of barrels. So we're going to load it with some cannonballs and see what it does. So one difference from old school is that I got stuck on the cannon after I started firing it, so I'm just stood here looking in the direction the cannonballs are flying. So you can't set up your cannon and then go and fight some things with melee as well. You have to just stand there firing the cannon. So that's been a quick overview of the cannon in RSC. Hopefully it's been informative. Here's a quick look around the model. So it's not the best way of trading ranged. It's pretty useless really, because it's so expensive and time consuming to make the cannonballs, but I think it's still an interesting novelty to take a look at how it worked back in the day. So here I am in RD Zoo, ready to test the next range weapon, which I have here in my hand. You can't see it because in RSC darts are invisible. So like with the knife, it just looks like a sword. The dart just looks like nothing at all. It's too small for them to bother making anything for, but I can assure you that I'm holding steel throwing darts. I can chuck them at this bear. So a cool thing about darts again is that you can hold a shield. I got them equipped, and I suppose that maybe if you're trying to be sneaky and surprise someone, they think, oh, he hasn't got a weapon equipped, he's no threat. But actually you're ready there with your darts, ready to attack them. But I don't think they're really any use in that respect. They're definitely a step up from knives and spears, because at least they're stackable, so you don't have to bring a whole inventory of weapons to chuck at your enemy. So well, it's kind of cool that you can hold a shield. Remember that you can't use ranged in melee combat anyway, so it doesn't really matter. You make 7 dart tips from a bar when you can make 10 arrow tips instead, so why wouldn't you just make arrows? In any case, it's still a pretty interesting weapon. So for the final weapon that we're going to take a look at, we need to go to Lowe's archery store and take a look at his wares. The last one is the crossbow, so let's get crossbow, get some ammo and take a look at how it works. So in my opinion, the crossbow looks pretty cool. They definitely put a lot more effort into this than they did with the the darts, which is zero effort at all. So there's no rune crossbow or addy crossbow or anything in Classic. We just got the regular, good old normal crossbow. You can also get a Phoenix crossbow, but it's supposedly just the same strength as the regular crossbow. So for ammo we have regular bolts sold in the shop. You can also get oyster tip bolts that you can fletch yourself, or there's a shop in the Grand Tree that stocks one of them for some reason, but I haven't tried out those to see how strong they are. A lot of people say that the crossbow is pretty useless, but I would beg to differ, because I think if you play RSC, you need, if you're going to train your range, you need something to shoot, to train it with. So you find yourself, like, when you pass a rune shop, like, you know, you'll buy out the rune stock so you can train your magic. Whenever I passed an archery shop, I would buy out the arrow stock, so I actually had something to train with. And personally, I could never quite get enough. So if you add in a crossbow and the crossbow bolts to the mix, then it really helps out. So something I've been interested in for a while, quite a long time actually, is the lowest possible level that you can achieve a Legends caper in RuneScape, and in RuneScape Classic, moreover, the real RuneScape. And so this is going to be the focus of episode 3 of RuneScape Classic Revisited. Obviously I'm not going to get the whole thing done in episode 3, but the road to lowest level legends will begin next episode, guys. If you have any other ideas for content that you'd like to see, I have quite a few accounts actually on RuneScape Classic. So I've got this one, my main. I've also got quite a high level pure that could potentially do a little PKing on if I could find some people for that. I've got a staking account. Not that I'm feeling like doing much staking anymore. I don't feel like losing all my cash. And I think most of the staking nowadays is done on just maxed accounts, which I don't have, so it's pointless. In any case, if you have any ideas for things in the game that you'd like to see, you know, any mini games, any quests that you'd like a walkthrough for example, let me know. Otherwise, I'll be back next week. I'll be back in 2 years. I'll be back fairly soon with the next episode, which will be the beginning of my road to lowest level legends. Okay guys, see you soon.